The woman burst through the emergency department doors at 11:47 p.m. on a Friday night, her hair wild, her eyes frantic, her voice cutting through the usual chaos like a knife. "Where's my husband?" she screamed. "Someone tell me where my husband is." I was at the nurse's station, 3 hours into a 12-hour shift, reviewing labs on a patient with suspected appendicitis. The sound of her voice made me look up immediately. There was something in it, raw terror mixed with desperate determination, that demanded attention. She was maybe 40 years old, wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt, no coat despite the freezing December night. Her feet were in untied sneakers, like she'd shoved them on in a hurry. Mascara was smeared beneath her eyes, and her hands were shaking as she gripped her phone. Nancy, the triage nurse, stood up from her desk. "Ma'am, I need you to calm down. What's your husband's name?" "David. David Chen. He was brought here in an ambulance. A construction accident. They called me 45 minutes ago and said he was here, but I've been looking everywhere and no one can tell me where he is." Nancy pulled up the computer system, her fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. "Let me check. David Chen, you said?" "Yes, David Chen, Chen. He's 42 years old. Please, I need to see him." Nancy scanned the list of patients. She frowned, scrolled down, scrolled back up. "I'm not seeing a David Chen registered in the system." The woman's face went pale. "What do you mean you're not seeing him?" "They told me he was here. The paramedics said Hospital St. Halstead. This is St. Halstead, right?" "Yes, ma'am, but then where is he?" Her voice rose to a near shriek. "Where is my husband?" I walked over, sensing this needed more than a quick computer search. "Ma'am, I'm Dr. Reyes. Let me help. You said he was in a construction accident?" She turned to me, her eyes filling with tears. "Yes, he's a foreman. There was a collapse at the site downtown. Multiple injuries. The site supervisor called me and said David had been taken to St. Halstead by ambulance, but I can't find him. No one knows where he is. Multiple injuries. Construction site. Downtown." Something clicked in my memory. "Nancy," I said, "what time did that mass casualty alert come through? The one from the collapsed scaffolding?" Nancy checked her notes. "About 90 minutes ago. 5 patients, all critical. They were triaged to trauma bays 1, 2, and 3, and 2 went straight to the OR." I turned back to the woman. "What's your name?" "Linda. Linda Chen. Linda. There was a major accident tonight with multiple victims. In situations like that, when patients come in extremely unstable, sometimes they're registered as unidentified until we can confirm their identities. Let me check the trauma bay and OR logs." Hope flickered in her eyes. "So he might be here, just not in the system?" "It's possible. Stay right here. I'll be back in 2 minutes." I walked quickly to the trauma coordinator's office, a small room adjacent to the main trauma bay where all major incidents were logged. Dr. James Park, the trauma surgeon, was there reviewing charts. "Park," I said, "the construction site collapsed. We had 5 patients. Do we have positive IDs on all of them?" He pulled up the trauma log on his tablet. "Let me see. Patient 1, Jackson Moore, identified by driver's license. Patient 2, Antonio Reyes, identified by coworker. Patient 3, unidentified male, no wallet, no ID. Patient 4, Kevin Walsh, identified by company badge. Patient 5, Marcus Lee, identified by ID and pocket." "Unidentified male," I said. "What's his status?" Park's expression darkened. "Critical. Maybe the worst of the bunch. Crush injury to the chest and abdomen, internal bleeding, possible spinal fracture. He's in OR3 right now. Dr. Vasquez and Dr. Harrison are both scrubbed in. It's bad, Reyes." My stomach tightened. "There's a woman in the waiting area, Linda Chen. She's looking for her husband, David Chen. Says he was at that construction site." Park looked back at his tablet. "What does he look like?" "I don't know, but she's desperate and scared. Bring her back. Let her look at the personal effects we collected from the unidentified patient. If it's her husband, she can identify him." I headed back to the waiting area. Linda was standing exactly where I'd left her, arms wrapped around herself, rocking slightly on her feet. Nancy was trying to get her to sit down, but she refused. "Linda," I said, approaching carefully, "we have 1 patient from the accident who came in without identification. He's in surgery right now. I need you to come with me to see if you can identify some of his belongings." Her hand went to her mouth. "Oh God, is he alive?" "He's in surgery. That's all I can tell you right now. Come with me." She followed me down the hallway, her steps quick and unsteady. We went to the trauma bay supply room where personal effects were stored in labeled bags. I found the one marked unidentified male construction site, Trauma Bay 2, and pulled it from the shelf. Inside was a wallet that had been crushed and water damaged, likely from broken pipes at the site. The leather was split open, cards scattered. There was a wedding ring, simple gold band, a broken cell phone, work gloves, a set of keys on a carabiner, and a destroyed photograph, 2 people smiling on a beach, the image barely visible through the water damage and blood stains. I laid the items out on the counter. "Do any of these belong to your husband?" Linda's eyes locked on the wedding ring. She picked it up with trembling fingers, and I saw her face crumble. "This is his ring," she whispered. "We got married 15 years ago. I have the matching one." She held up her left hand, showing an identical gold band. "Where is he? Please, I need to see him. He's in surgery. He has critical injuries. The surgical team is working on him right now." "What kind of injuries?" I hesitated. Honesty was important, but so was not completely devastating her before she had a chance to process what was happening. Significant trauma to his chest and abdomen, internal bleeding. They're doing everything they can. She stared at the ring in her hand, then looked up at me. Her face was a mixture of terror and determination. "I need to be near him. Even if I can't see him, I need to be as close as possible. Please, I can take you to the surgical waiting area. You'll be right outside the OR. Someone will update you as soon as there's news." "How long has he been in surgery?" I checked my watch and did the mental math. "About an hour. And no one called me? No one told me he was here?" We didn't have his identity, and the surgical team has been focused entirely on saving his life. "I'm sorry. In mass casualty situations, communication sometimes falls through the cracks." She closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. "An hour. He's been here for an hour, and I've been out there going crazy, not knowing where he was. I know. I'm sorry. But you're here now, and we're going to keep you informed every step of the way." She clutched the wedding ring to her chest. "He can't die. We have 3 kids. The youngest is only 7. He can't die." And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just a medical case. This was a family on the verge of being shattered. A woman who might lose her husband, 3 children who might lose their father, and somewhere in OR 3, a man was fighting for his life, not knowing that his wife was finally here, that she'd been searching for him, that she needed him to survive. "Come on," I said gently. "Let's get you to the waiting area, and I'll make sure you get updates. I promise." She nodded, but her eyes were distant, haunted. She was already imagining the worst, and the terrible truth was, she might be right. I'd been at Hospital St. Halstead for 4 months now. 4 months of residency in internal medicine, working under Dr. Amelia Cross and rotating through different departments. Tonight, I was covering the emergency department, my 2nd week on the rotation. The ER was always intense, but Friday nights were something else entirely. A steady stream of injuries, illnesses, intoxications, and emergencies that never seemed to slow down. By the time Linda Chen burst through those doors, I'd already seen a heart attack, 2 motor vehicle accidents, a teenager with alcohol poisoning, an elderly woman who'd fallen and fractured her hip, and a man who'd superglued his hand to his forehead on a dare. Medicine was never boring. The construction site collapse had happened around 10 p.m. A section of scaffolding on a high-rise project downtown had given way, sending 5 workers tumbling 3 stories onto concrete and rebar. The call had come through as a mass casualty incident. All hands on deck, clear the trauma bays, get surgery on standby. I'd been in the ER when the first ambulances arrived. The paramedics came in hot, sirens wailing, stretchers moving at a run. I'd helped triage, doing rapid assessments to determine who needed immediate surgery versus who could be stabilized in the trauma bay. The unidentified male, David Chen, though we hadn't known it then, had been the worst. His chest was crushed, ribs shattered, likely punctured lungs. His abdomen was rigid, distended with blood. His blood pressure was barely measurable. He was unconscious, unresponsive, circling the drain. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the trauma surgeon who'd saved Sarah Mitchell weeks ago, had taken one look at him and said, "Straight to the OR, now. He doesn't have time for anything else." They'd rushed him upstairs before I could even do a thorough exam. All I'd seen was a glimpse. A man in his 40s, Asian features, blood everywhere, broken and barely alive. I hadn't thought about his family, hadn't considered that somewhere. Someone was waiting for him, not knowing where he was. That was the thing about emergency medicine. In the chaos of saving lives, it was easy to forget that each patient was someone's whole world. I escorted Linda to the surgical waiting area on the 3rd floor. It was the same depressing space where I'd met the Mitchell's parents 6 weeks ago. Beige walls, uncomfortable chairs, outdated magazines, a television playing the news on mute. At this hour, it was mostly empty. Just one other family, an older couple sitting close together, holding hands, looking exhausted and worried. I got Linda settled in a chair near the window. Someone from the surgical team will come out to update you as soon as they can. It might be a while. These surgeries can take several hours. I understand, she said quietly. She was still clutching David's wedding ring. Can you tell me what happened? The site supervisor just said there was a collapse. He didn't give me details. I don't know all the specifics, I admitted. But from what the paramedics reported, a section of scaffolding collapsed. Your husband and 4 other workers fell about 3 stories. She flinched. 3 stories? Yes. And the others? Are they okay? 3 of them are stable. 1 is in surgery like your husband. I don't have details on their conditions. She nodded slowly, processing. David's been a foreman for 12 years. He's so careful about safety. Always checking equipment, always making sure his crew follows protocols. How did this happen? I don't know. There will probably be an investigation. She looked down at the ring in her hand. We were supposed to go to dinner tonight. Our anniversary is next week, 15 years. We were going to go out, just the 2 of us, leave the kids with my mom. He texted me at 6 p.m. saying he'd be home by 8. Her voice broke. He never came home. I didn't know what to say. There were no words that could make this better, no platitudes that wouldn't sound hollow. So I just sat down beside her. Do you want me to call anyone for you? Your mom? A friend? My mom is with the kids. I didn't tell them what happened. Just said Daddy was working late and I had to run an errand. I didn't want to scare them until I knew. She trailed off. That's understandable, but I should call her. Let her know I might be here all night. She pulled out her phone, stared at it for a moment, then set it in her lap. I can't. If I hear her voice, I'll fall apart, and I need to stay strong for David. You don't have to be strong every second. It's okay to fall apart. She shook her head. Not yet. Not until I know he's going to be okay. Then I can fall apart. I looked at her. This woman who'd been married for 15 years, who had 3 kids, who'd rushed to the hospital in the middle of the night without even grabbing a coat, who'd spent an hour frantically searching for her husband while he was fighting for his life in an OR. I'm going to check on his status, I said. See if I can get any updates. I'll be back in a few minutes. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for finding him, for letting me know he's here. I was starting to think, I don't know what I was thinking, that maybe they'd taken him somewhere else, that maybe the supervisor was wrong, that maybe, she didn't finish, but I knew what she meant, that maybe he was already dead, and no one had told her yet. I went downstairs to the OR suite. The surgical floor was quieter than the ER, but there was an undercurrent of intensity. Behind those closed doors, lives were being saved or lost. Every surgery was a battle. I found a surgical nurse named Maria at the desk outside OR 3. She was monitoring the board that tracked all active surgeries, start times, surgeons, estimated durations. Maria, I said, the patient in OR 3, the unidentified male from the construction site. His wife is here. She just identified him. His name is David Chen. Maria made a note on her chart. I'll update his records. How's she doing? About as well as you'd expect. How's he doing? She glanced at the closed OR doors, then lowered her voice. Not great. They've already given him 12 units of blood. Dr. Vasquez had to do a splenectomy. His spleen was shattered. Dr. Harrison is working on his spine right now. Possible fracture at T7. My stomach dropped. T7 was mid-thoracic spine. A fracture there could mean paralysis from the chest down. Is he awake? No. He's been completely under the whole time. They're not sure how much brain injury there is from the hypoxia. His blood pressure crashed twice before they got him stabilized. Hypoxia. Lack of oxygen to the brain. That could mean permanent damage. Cognitive deficits, memory loss, personality changes. Or worse, how much longer? At least another 2 hours. Maybe more. It's complicated. I thanked her and headed back upstairs. I needed to update Linda, but I didn't want to terrify her with all the details. Not yet. Not until we knew more. When I got back to the waiting area, Linda was on the phone. I could hear her speaking quietly. Still in surgery. They don't know yet. I'll call you as soon as I hear anything. I know, Mom. I know. Tell them Daddy loves them. Tell them he's going to be okay. Her voice cracked on the last word. She hung up and looked at me. Any news? The surgery is ongoing. It's complicated, but the surgical team is highly skilled. Dr. Vasquez is one of the best trauma surgeons in the state. But how is he? Is he stable? I hesitated. Honesty versus hope. Where was the line? He's critical, I said carefully. They're addressing multiple injuries. It's going to be a long surgery, and then a long recovery. But they're doing everything possible. She studied my face, and I could see her reading between the lines. She knew I was holding back. Just tell me straight. Is he going to die? I don't know, I said honestly. I wish I could tell you yes or no, but the truth is, it's too early to say. The next few hours are crucial. She nodded slowly, accepting the uncertainty, even though I could see it was killing her. Okay, thank you for being honest. I sat down beside her again. Do you want me to stay with you for a while? You don't have to do that. I'm sure you have other patients. I do, but they're stable, and I think you could use the company. She smiled weakly. I'd like that. Thank you. We sat there together for the next hour. Linda talked to fill the silence, telling me about David, about their life together. They'd met in college. She was studying nursing, he was studying civil engineering. They'd been friends first, study partners who slowly realized they were falling in love. They got married a year after graduation in a small ceremony at her parents' house. She'd worked as a nurse for 10 years before staying home with the kids. 3 children, Amy, 14, Jason, 10, and Emma, 7. David worked long hours, but he was a devoted father, coached Jason's soccer team, helped Amy with her math homework, read bedtime stories to Emma every night. He's the kind of dad who shows up, Linda said. To every recital, every game, every school event, even when he's exhausted from work, he shows up. She looked down at the wedding ring still clutched in her hand. I keep thinking about this morning. We had a stupid argument about something. I don't even remember what. Taking out the trash, maybe? Something completely pointless. And he left for work annoyed and I was annoyed, and we didn't really say goodbye properly. Tears filled her eyes. What if that's the last conversation we ever have? What if the last thing he remembers is me being irritated about the garbage? Linda, I should have told him I love him. I should have kissed him goodbye. But I was being petty and stubborn. And now he's in there fighting for his life and he doesn't know. She broke down then, sobbing into her hands. I put my arm around her shoulders, letting her cry. He knows, I said quietly. 15 years of marriage, 3 kids, a life built together. He knows you love him. One argument about trash doesn't erase all of that. But what if he doesn't wake up? What if I never get to tell him? Then you'll tell him anyway. You'll sit beside his bed and talk to him, and some part of him will hear you. That's what love is, Linda. It doesn't need consciousness to exist. She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. Do you really believe that? I thought about Marcus, about Sarah and Ryan, about all the patients I'd seen over these 4 months who'd fought their way back from the edge, who'd defied the odds, who'd survived impossible situations. Yes, I said, I really do. At 2:30 a.m., Dr. Elena Vasquez emerged from the OR. She was still in her scrubs, her surgical cap pulled down, her face drawn with exhaustion. She looked around the waiting room, and her eyes landed on Linda and me. Linda shot to her feet. Is he alive? Yes, Dr. Vasquez said, and I felt Linda sag with relief. He's alive. The surgery went as well as could be expected given the severity of his injuries. Can I see him? Not yet. He's being transferred to the ICU. But let me explain what we found and what we did. We all sat down. Dr. Vasquez pulled out her tablet and brought up David's surgical notes. David sustained multiple traumatic injuries from the fall. Most significantly, his spleen was ruptured beyond repair, so we removed it entirely. He can live without a spleen, but he'll need to be careful about infections for the rest of his life. Linda nodded, listening intently. He also had severe internal bleeding in his abdomen. We repaired several blood vessel tears and a laceration to his liver. He required massive transfusion, 16 units of blood, 10 units of plasma, and 2 units of platelets. 16 units. That was more than his entire blood volume replaced. Additionally, Dr. Vasquez continued, he has multiple rib fractures, a collapsed left lung which we reinflated, and Dr. Harrison, our orthopedic surgeon, addressed a compression fracture in his thoracic spine. Linda's hand went to her mouth. His spine is broken? Fractured. It's at the T7 level. Dr. Harrison stabilized it surgically. The good news is that it doesn't appear to have caused spinal cord damage. We saw no evidence of neurological deficit during surgery. But we won't know for certain until he wakes up and we can do a full neurological exam. So he might be paralyzed? It's unlikely based on what we saw, but we can't rule it out completely. Spinal injuries are unpredictable. Linda was trembling. What else? What other injuries? Dr. Vasquez hesitated. and I knew what was coming. The worst news was always saved for last. David was without adequate oxygen for several minutes before the paramedics arrived. His heart stopped twice in the trauma bay before we got him upstairs. We don't yet know if there was any brain injury from the oxygen deprivation. Brain injury, Linda repeated, her voice hollow. We'll need to monitor him closely. The next 24 to 48 hours will tell us a lot. He's young and otherwise healthy, which works in his favor, but I won't lie to you. He's critically ill. The next few days are going to be crucial. Linda's face was ashen, but he could wake up and be okay? He could recover fully? It's possible. I've seen people survive worse and make remarkable recoveries, but I've also seen... Dr. Vasquez trailed off, not wanting to finish that sentence. I understand, Linda whispered. When can I see him? He'll be in the ICU within the hour. He's intubated, on a ventilator, and he has multiple lines and tubes. It's going to look overwhelming, but the ICU team is excellent and they'll take good care of him. Dr. Vasquez stood up. Do you have any other questions? The other workers from the accident, are they okay? 3 were treated and discharged. The 4th had surgery as well, but his injuries were less severe than David's. He's expected to make a full recovery. So David had gotten the worst of it, the unluckiest of the 5. After Dr. Vasquez left, Linda turned to me. I need to call my mom, tell the kids something. What are you going to say? I don't know. The truth? A version of it? I don't want to lie to them, but I don't want to terrify them either. She looked at me helplessly. What would you do? I thought about it. I'd tell them that Daddy was hurt at work, that he's in the hospital, and that the doctors are taking good care of him. Answer their questions honestly, but don't give more information than they ask for. Kids are resilient, but they also need to feel like the adults in their lives are handling things. She nodded. Okay, I can do that. She stepped into the hallway to make the call. I could hear her voice, carefully controlled, explaining to her mother what had happened, then speaking to each of her children. Hi, baby. No, Daddy's okay, but he got hurt at work. He fell and broke some bones. The doctors fixed him up and he's sleeping now. I'm at the hospital with him. I'll come home tomorrow to see you, okay? I love you too, sweetheart. When she came back in, she looked exhausted. My mom is going to tell them more in the morning, age-appropriate versions. Amy's old enough to understand more, but Emma, she shook her head. Emma still thinks Band-Aids fix everything. Maybe they do, I said, in their own way. An hour later, Linda was allowed into the ICU. I walked with her, preparing her for what she was about to see. He's going to be sedated. He won't be able to respond to you. But talk to him anyway. Studies show that unconscious patients can sometimes hear familiar voices. What should I say? Whatever feels right. Tell him about your day. Tell him you love him. Tell him the kids miss him. Just be present. We reached David's room, ICU room 4. Through the glass, I could see him lying in the hospital bed, surrounded by equipment, ventilator, multiple IV pumps, arterial line, central line, chest tube, Foley catheter, nasogastric tube, monitors tracking every vital sign. Linda stopped in the doorway, her hand pressed against the glass. Oh God, I know it's a lot, but all of this is keeping him alive. Every tube, every machine, they're all there to help him. She took a shaky breath and stepped into the room. I followed, staying near the door to give her space. Linda approached the bed slowly, as if afraid she might hurt him just by being near. When she reached his side, she looked down at his face, swollen from the trauma and the fluids, barely recognizable under all the medical equipment. David, she whispered, I'm here. I found you. She took his hand carefully, mindful of the IV line. I'm so sorry it took me so long. I was looking for you. I was so scared. Tears streamed down her face. The kids are okay. They miss you. Emma wanted me to tell you that she drew you a picture at school. It's a rainbow. She says rainbows make everything better. She stroked his hand gently. You have to wake up, David. You have to come back to us. I need you. The kids need you. We're not ready to do this without you. I watched from the doorway, feeling like an intruder on this intimate moment. But Linda had asked me to stay, and I wouldn't leave her alone. The ventilator hissed. The monitors beeped steadily. David didn't move, didn't respond. But Linda kept talking to him, kept holding his hand, kept being present. And I thought about what I'd told her earlier, that love doesn't need consciousness to exist. I just hoped consciousness would return, because this family needed their father back. Over the next 48 hours, I checked on David and Linda every chance I got. I wasn't technically assigned to his case. He was under the care of the ICU team and the trauma service, but I felt connected to their story now. I'd been the one to find Linda, to identify David, to sit with her during those agonizing first hours. I couldn't just walk away. David remained sedated and stable, which the ICU team considered a victory. His vital signs were acceptable. His bleeding had stopped. His organs were functioning. All the things that could have gone catastrophically wrong in the first 2 days hadn't. But he also wasn't waking up. On Saturday morning, they began lightening his sedation to assess his neurological status. I was there when Dr. Michael Torres, the ICU attending, examined him. "David," Dr. Torres said loudly, "can you hear me? Open your eyes if you can hear me." Nothing. "David, squeeze my hand." No response. Dr. Torres pulled out a pen light and checked David's pupils. They reacted to light, a good sign. He tested reflexes, checking for movement in David's arms and legs. The reflexes were present but sluggish. "He's not showing signs of higher cortical function yet," Dr. Torres said to Linda, who was standing at the bedside gripping David's hand. "But it's only been 48 hours since the injury. The brain sometimes needs more time to recover from trauma and hypoxia." "How much more time?" Linda asked. "Days, maybe a week. Everyone's different. We'll continue to lighten the sedation gradually and keep assessing." "And if he doesn't wake up?" Dr. Torres was quiet for a moment. "Let's not borrow trouble. Right now, his body is healing. That's what matters." But Linda's expression told me she understood what he wasn't saying. If he doesn't wake up soon, we start considering the possibility of permanent brain damage. Linda's mother brought the kids to visit that afternoon. I was in the ICU when they arrived, and I watched from the nurse's station as the family gathered outside David's room. Amy, the 14-year-old, stood with her arms crossed, trying to look brave but failing. Her eyes were red from crying. Jason, the 10-year-old, kept asking questions. "Why does he have all those tubes? When is he going to wake up? Can he hear us?" Emma, the 7-year-old, was clutching a piece of paper, the rainbow drawing she'd mentioned. She looked scared and confused. Linda's mother, Margaret, was a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a strong presence. She had her arm around Linda, holding her daughter up as much as supporting her. Dr. Torres spoke with the family, explaining in age-appropriate terms what had happened and what to expect. Then he allowed them into the room, one at a time. Amy went first. She approached her father's bed hesitantly, then broke down in tears. "Daddy, please wake up. Please. I'm sorry for all the times I was bratty. I'm sorry I said I hated you last week when you grounded me. I didn't mean it. Please wake up." Jason was quieter. He stood beside the bed, staring at his father, then said, "My team won our soccer game yesterday. I scored a goal. I wish you could have been there." He reached out and touched David's arm gently. "Get better, Dad." Emma was last. Linda lifted her up so she could see her father better. Emma held up her rainbow drawing. "Look, Daddy, I made this for you. Rainbows make everything better, remember? That's what you always say." She leaned close and kissed his forehead. "I love you, Daddy. Come home soon." Watching these children trying to process their father's injury, trying to be brave, trying to understand why he wasn't waking up, was one of the hardest things I'd experienced in my short career. Children shouldn't have to see their parents like this. After the kids left, Linda stayed. She always stayed. She'd barely left the ICU since Friday night, sleeping in the recliner beside David's bed, eating hospital cafeteria food, existing in a state of exhausted vigilance. I found her there Sunday evening. She was holding David's hand, staring at his face like she could will him awake through sheer force of love. "Linda?" I said gently from the doorway. "Have you eaten today?" She looked up, startled, like she'd forgotten other people existed. "I had some crackers." "That's not enough. Come on. Let's go to the cafeteria. I'll buy you dinner." "I can't leave him. He's stable. The nurses will call you immediately if anything changes. You need to take care of yourself, or you're going to collapse." She hesitated, torn between her need to stay and her body's demands for food and rest. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, but just for 20 minutes. We went to the cafeteria, which was nearly empty at this hour. I got her a turkey sandwich, soup, and coffee. She picked at the food half-heartedly. "I keep thinking about Friday night," she said quietly, "when I couldn't find him, when no one knew where he was. I was so scared he was dead, that he died alone without me there. But he wasn't. He's alive. But what if he never wakes up? What if this is it? He's alive, but not alive. What kind of life is that? You can't think like that. Why not? Someone has to face reality. Someone has to consider the possibility that my husband is going to be a vegetable for the rest of his life, and I'm going to have to decide whether to keep him on machines or..." She stopped, unable to say it. "Linda, It's been 2 days. 2 days. You can't make those decisions yet. But at some point I might have to, and I don't know if I'm strong enough to make them. I set down my coffee. Can I tell you about a patient I had a few weeks ago? She looked up at me. His name was Ryan. He was in a car accident. His heart was so damaged we had to put a mechanical device in his chest to keep him alive. His wife, Sarah, was in the same accident. When she woke up, she was consumed with guilt. She thought it was her fault, thought she'd destroyed his life. What happened to them? They recovered. Not fully. Ryan still has the device, and they have a long road ahead. But they're together. They're fighting. And Sarah learned something important, that love isn't about guilt or blame. It's about showing up, even when things are impossibly hard. Linda wiped her eyes. You're saying I should stop thinking about worst-case scenarios and just be present. I'm saying that's all any of us can do. We can't control the future. We can only control how we show up today. She smiled weakly. You're wise for someone so young. I'm not wise. I'm just repeating what older, wiser doctors have told me. We finished eating in comfortable silence. Then we headed back upstairs to the ICU, where David was waiting. Still unconscious, still fighting, still holding on to life by the thinnest of threads. On Monday morning, something changed. I was doing morning rounds with Dr. Cross when I got a page from the ICU. David Chen showing signs of consciousness, family requesting Dr. Reyes. I excused myself and headed to the ICU at a near run. When I got to David's room, there was a crowd. Dr. Torres, several nurses, Linda and David's mother Margaret. And David was moving. His head was turning slightly from side to side. His fingers were twitching. His eyelids were fluttering. David, Dr. Torres was saying loudly. Can you hear me? Open your eyes. David's eyes opened slowly, squinting against the light. They were unfocused, confused, but open. Linda let out a sob. Oh, thank God. Thank God. David, Dr. Torres said. I'm Dr. Torres. You're in the hospital. You were in an accident. Do you understand? David's lips moved, but no sound came out. He was still intubated. Don't try to talk. You have a breathing tube. Just nod if you understand me. David's head moved slightly. It could have been a nod, or it could have been random movement. Can you squeeze my hand? Dr. Torres placed his hand in David's. We all watched, waiting. David's fingers closed weakly around Dr. Torres's hand. Good. That's very good. Now squeeze your wife's hand. Linda put her hand in David's other hand. David, it's me. It's Linda. Squeeze my hand, baby. David's eyes moved toward her voice. His fingers tightened around hers. He knows me, Linda whispered. He knows I'm here. Dr. Torres continued the examination, testing reflexes, checking movement in David's arms and legs. Everything responded, albeit weakly. He has movement in all 4 extremities, Dr. Torres said. That's excellent news. It means the spinal fracture hasn't caused paralysis. When can you take the breathing tube out? Linda asked. Let's give him a few more hours to wake up fully. We want to make sure he can protect his airway and breathe on his own. But if he continues to improve, we could extubate him this afternoon. Linda turned back to David. Did you hear that, honey? They're going to take the tube out. You're going to be okay. David's eyes focused on her face, really focused for the first time. And I saw recognition dawn there. A husband seeing his wife, knowing her, coming back to her. It was one of the most beautiful things I'd ever witnessed. They extubated David that afternoon. The process was quick. Deflate the balloon, pull the tube, replace it with an oxygen mask. David coughed violently, gasping, his body protesting, but he was breathing on his own. Easy, Dr. Torres said. Take slow breaths. You're okay. It took several minutes for David's breathing to settle. Then he looked around the room, his eyes landing on Linda. Linda, he rasped. His voice was barely audible, raw from the tube. She grabbed his hand. I'm here. I'm right here. What happened? You were in an accident at the construction site. You fell. He frowned, trying to remember. The scaffolding. It was shaking. Don't worry about that now. Just rest. The crew, the other guys, they're okay. Everyone survived. He closed his eyes in relief. Good. Then his eyes opened again, panicked. The kids. Where are the kids? They're with my mom. They're safe. They've been asking about you. I want to see them. You will. Soon. When you're a little stronger. David tried to shift in the bed and winced, pain crossing his face. Everything hurts. I know. You broke a lot of bones. But you're going to heal. The doctors fixed you up. He looked at her for a long moment. I was scared. When I was falling, I thought I was going to die. Linda's face crumpled. You didn't. You're here. You're alive. I kept thinking. I never said goodbye to you this morning. We were fighting about something stupid. The trash. We were fighting about the trash. Was it? He almost smiled. That's dumb. Yeah, it really was. She leaned close, her forehead almost touching his. I love you. I'm sorry about the fight. I'm sorry about all the stupid fights. Me too. His voice was getting weaker, exhaustion pulling him down. Love you so much. I know. Rest now. I'll be right here when you wake up. His eyes closed, and within seconds, he was asleep. Linda stayed beside him, holding his hand, tears of relief streaming down her face. I stepped out of the room, giving them privacy, but as I left, I felt something shift in my chest, a sense of rightness, of things falling into place. David had woken up. He knew his wife. He could move, speak, remember. Against all odds, he was going to survive. But survival, I would soon learn, was just the beginning. Over the next few days, David's physical condition improved steadily. He was transferred out of the ICU to a regular room. The chest tube was removed. He started eating solid food. Physical therapy began working with him to rebuild his strength, but something else became apparent. David wasn't quite himself. He was forgetful. He'd ask Linda the same questions multiple times. He'd forget conversations they'd had an hour ago. His attention span was short. He'd start watching TV and then forget what show he was watching. And his emotions were volatile. He'd cry at small things. A news story, a sentimental commercial. He'd get frustrated easily when his body wouldn't do what his brain told it to do. Linda was worried. So was I. On Thursday afternoon, a neurologist named Dr. Patricia Okoye came to evaluate David. She did a comprehensive cognitive assessment, memory tests, attention tasks, problem-solving exercises. Afterward, she met with Linda and me in the hallway outside David's room. David has cognitive deficits consistent with hypoxic brain injury, Dr. Okoye explained. His short-term memory is significantly impaired. His executive function, his ability to plan, organize, and make decisions, is also affected. Linda's hand went to her mouth. Is it permanent? It's hard to say. The brain has remarkable plasticity, especially in younger patients. With cognitive rehabilitation therapy, he may recover much of his function, but it will take time, months, maybe years, and some deficits may be permanent. What does that mean for his life, his work? Dr. Okoye hesitated. He won't be able to return to his previous job, at least not in the foreseeable future. Being a construction foreman requires quick thinking, multitasking, memory of complex procedures. Right now, David can't do those things. So what can he do? Focus on recovery, work with therapists, learn strategies to compensate for his deficits, and lean on his support system. That's you, Linda. You're going to be crucial to his recovery. After Dr. Okoye left, Linda stood in the hallway for a long moment, staring at nothing. This isn't what I expected, she said quietly. What do you mean? When David woke up, I thought that was it. The hard part was over. But this, she gestured toward his room. This is almost harder, because he's here, but he's not quite here. He looks like my husband. He sounds like my husband, but there's something missing, something that made him David. He's still in there, I said. His personality, his memories, his love for you and the kids, that's all still there. It's just buried under the injury. Therapy will help him find it again. And if it doesn't, then you adapt. You learn to love the person he is now, not the person he was. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. I already do love him, but I miss who he was. Is that selfish? It's human. David was discharged 2 weeks after the accident. He went home with a walker, a pain management plan, instructions for wound care, and a thick folder of referrals: physical therapy, occupational therapy, cognitive rehabilitation, neurology follow-up, trauma surgery follow-up. His life had been reduced to appointments and limitations. Linda called me a few days after his discharge. She asked if we could meet for coffee, and I agreed. We met at a cafe near the hospital on a Saturday afternoon. She looked exhausted. She'd aged in the past 2 weeks, new lines appearing around her eyes and mouth. How's he doing? I asked. He's struggling. Physically, he's okay. Sore, but healing. But mentally, emotionally, she shook her head. He gets so frustrated. He'll try to remember something simple like where we keep the coffee mugs, and he can't. He'll break down crying because he feels like he's losing his mind. That's a normal response to brain injury. I know. the therapist told me. But it's hard to watch. He used to be so capable, so confident. Now he second-guesses everything. How are the kids handling it? Emma thinks everything is fine. She's just happy Daddy's home. Jason is confused. He doesn't understand why Daddy can't play soccer with him anymore. And Amy? Linda's voice broke. Amy is angry. She's angry that this happened, angry that her dad is different now, angry at the world. She barely talks to us. Teenagers struggle with change. I know, but I don't have the energy to deal with it right now. I'm stretched so thin trying to take care of David, manage the house, pay bills that are piling up because David's on disability and his income is gone. She wiped her eyes. I'm drowning, Dr. Reyes, and I don't know how to ask for help because everyone assumes that since David survived, everything is fine now. I didn't know what to say. There were no easy answers, no platitudes that would make this better. Have you looked into support groups? I asked. For caregivers of brain injury survivors? I don't have time for support groups. I barely have time to shower. Then ask for help. From your mom, from friends, from David's coworkers. People want to help, but they don't know what you need unless you tell them. She nodded, but I could see the resistance. Linda was the kind of person who'd spent her whole life being the helper, not the one who needed help. Asking was going to be hard. Can I tell you something? She said quietly. Of course. Sometimes I wish he died in that accident. The words hung in the air between us, terrible and honest. Not because I don't love him, she added quickly, but because this is so hard. Harder than grief would be. Grief has a trajectory. It gets better with time. But this feels like it's never going to end. I'm going to spend the rest of my life taking care of a man who can't quite remember my favorite color or what year we got married. She covered her face with her hands. I'm a terrible person. You're not. You're exhausted and overwhelmed and being honest about feelings most people are too afraid to admit. How do I keep doing this? One day at a time. Some days, 1 hour at a time. And you lean on the people who love you, even when it's hard to ask for help. She lowered her hands. Will you keep checking on us? I know you're not his doctor anymore, but you've been so important to us, to me. I need to know someone understands. Of course, I said. I'll check in every week, and you can call me anytime, day or night. She smiled weakly. Thank you. I kept my promise. I called Linda every week. Sometimes we'd talk for a few minutes, sometimes for an hour. I heard about David's progress, how he was remembering more, how his frustration was lessening, how he was learning to laugh again. But I also heard about the hard days. The days when he'd forget they'd had the conversation about his memory problems and would panic thinking he had dementia. The days when he'd try to do something simple and fail, and the defeat in his eyes would break Linda's heart. 3 months after the accident, I visited them at home. They lived in a modest house in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where kids played in the yards and neighbors knew each other's names. David answered the door. He looked better, healthier color, steadier on his feet, no longer using the walker. He smiled when he saw me. Dr. Reyes, come in, come in. The house was lived in and comfortable. Children's artwork covered the refrigerator. Family photos lined the walls. There was a therapy schedule posted on a corkboard, color-coded by appointment type. Linda came in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Noah, I'm so glad you could come. We sat in the living room drinking coffee, and they updated me on everything. David's memory was improving, though it would probably never be perfect. He could remember day-to-day things now, could follow conversations, could recognize all the people in his life. His frustration had lessened as he'd accepted his new limitations. He wasn't the same man he'd been before the accident, but he was learning to be okay with who he was now. I started volunteering, David said, at the community center, teaching basic woodworking to kids. I can't do construction anymore, but I can do this, and it feels good to be useful again. That's wonderful, I said. Linda added, and we're in couples therapy, learning how to communicate better, how to adjust to this new normal. It's helping. What about the kids? They're adjusting. Emma's still the easiest. She just loves having her dad around more. Jason's starting to understand that Dad's brain works differently now. And Amy, Linda glanced at David. Tell him about Amy. David smiled. She apologized. Last week. She said she was sorry for being angry, that she understands now that it's not my fault. We had a long talk. It was good. I felt warmth spread through my chest. I'm really happy for you guys. You've come so far. We have, Linda said. And a lot of it is because of you. You were there when we needed someone most. You didn't just treat David. You treated our whole family. That's what good medicine is supposed to be, I said. David reached over and took Linda's hand. We're not the same people we were before the accident. Our life isn't what we planned, but we're still here, still together, still fighting. Linda squeezed his hand. Still loving each other, even when it's hard. 4 months after the accident, I got a call from Linda on a Tuesday evening. I was at home reviewing case studies for an exam when my phone rang. "Noah," she said, her voice tight. "I need your help." "What's wrong?" David collapsed. He was fine 1 minute, then he just fell. He's conscious now, but he's confused. More confused than usual. Should I call an ambulance? Yes. Call 911 right now. I'll meet you at St. Halstead. I grabbed my keys and drove to the hospital, my mind racing through possibilities. Seizure, stroke, infection in someone with a compromised immune system from the splenectomy. When I arrived at the ER, David was already in an exam room. Linda was beside him, holding his hand, her face pale with fear. David looked disoriented. His speech was slurred. His right side seemed weaker than his left. Dr. Cross was examining him. She looked up when I entered. "Reyes, I heard this was your patient." "Technically he's not, but I've been following his case. What are you thinking?" "Possible stroke. I've ordered an urgent CT scan." A stroke in a 42-year-old man. It was rare, but not impossible, especially in someone who'd had significant trauma and blood loss. They rushed David to CT. I stayed with Linda in the waiting area. "This can't be happening," she said. "Not again. We've been doing so well. He was getting better. Let's not jump to conclusions. We need to see what the scan shows." 30 minutes later, Dr. Cross came back with the results. Her expression was serious. "It's not a stroke," she said, "but there is a problem. David has a subdural hematoma, a collection of blood between his brain and skull. It's small, but growing. It's likely been there since the original accident, slowly accumulating over months." "What does that mean?" Linda asked. "It means he needs surgery. We need to drain the blood and relieve the pressure on his brain. If we don't, the hematoma will continue to grow and could cause permanent brain damage or death." Linda's face went white. "Surgery. On his brain." "Yes, doctor. Marcus Webb, our neurosurgeon, is on his way. He's one of the best, but Linda, this is serious. The surgery carries risks. Bleeding, infection, stroke, death. But without it, David will deteriorate rapidly. And if the surgery works, he should recover fully from this particular issue. The hematoma is causing the confusion and weakness you've been seeing. Draining it should resolve those symptoms." Linda looked at David, who was lying on the exam table, barely aware of what was happening around him. "Okay," she said. "Do the surgery. Save him." The surgery took 3 hours. Dr. Webb drilled a small hole in David's skull, inserted a drain, and evacuated the hematoma. It was delicate work. One slip could cause catastrophic bleeding, but Dr. Webb didn't slip. He was precise, methodical, skilled. When he came out of the OR, he found Linda, me, and Margaret in the waiting area. "The surgery went well," he said. "We removed approximately 75 milliliters of blood. The pressure on his brain has been relieved." "Will he be okay?" Linda asked. "I believe so. He'll need to be monitored closely for the next few days, but I expect him to make a full recovery from this complication." Linda burst into tears. Margaret held her as she sobbed. Tears of relief, of exhaustion, of the sheer weight of 4 months of constant crisis. I put my hand on Linda's shoulder. "He's going to be okay. He's tough. You both are." She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. "I can't keep doing this. Every time I think we're out of the woods, something else happens." "I know, but this is the last big thing. The hematoma was a ticking time bomb left over from the original injury. Now that it's been addressed, there shouldn't be any more surprises. You can't promise that." "No, but I believe it." David woke up the next morning clearer than he'd been in weeks. The confusion was gone. The weakness had resolved. He knew where he was, what had happened, why he was in the hospital again. "This is getting old," he joked weakly when he saw Linda. She laughed through her tears. "You scared me. I scared myself. 1 minute I was standing in the kitchen, the next I was on the floor with no idea how I got there. You had bleeding in your brain. From the original accident, it built up over time. Is it fixed now?" "Yes. Dr. Webb drained it. You should be fine now." David reached for her hand. "I'm sorry for all of this, for putting you through 4 months of hell. Don't apologize. None of this is your fault. Still, you didn't sign up for this." "Actually, I did. 15 years ago. In sickness and in health, remember?" He smiled. "I remember. Good. Because I'm holding you to that. David was discharged a week later. This time, the recovery was quicker, smoother. The hematoma had been the last major complication. Everything else was just healing, time, rehabilitation. Linda sent me updates regularly. David was continuing with therapy. His memory was better now that the pressure on his brain was gone. He was volunteering more at the community center, talking about maybe teaching adult education classes in woodworking and basic home repair. He wasn't going back to construction. That door had closed, but new doors were opening. 6 months after the accident, 2 months after the hematoma surgery, Linda invited me to dinner at their house. "A thank you," she said, "for everything you've done for us." I arrived on a Saturday evening. The house was full of life. Kids running around, the smell of something delicious cooking, laughter echoing from the kitchen. Linda greeted me at the door with a hug. "Come in. David's been cooking all day. He says he has something to prove." David was in the kitchen, wearing an apron that said, "World's Okayest Chef." He was stirring a pot on the stove, carefully measuring spices, concentrating on the task. "Dr. Reyes," he said when he saw me. "Welcome. Hope you're hungry." "Starving." We ate dinner together. David, Linda, the 3 kids, Margaret, and me. The meal was delicious. The conversation was warm, full of teasing and inside jokes and the comfortable rhythm of a family that had been through hell and come out the other side. After dinner, David pulled me aside. "I wanted to thank you," he said. "Not just for the medical stuff, though that was obviously important, but for being there for Linda, for our family. You didn't have to do that. We weren't your responsibility once I left the hospital. You became more than a patient," I said. "You became people I care about. That's what I mean. You saw us as people, not just a case. That made all the difference." He pulled something from his pocket. It was his wedding ring, the one Linda had identified him by that first terrible night. "I wanted to show you this," he said. "Linda gave it back to me a few weeks ago. I'd been afraid to wear it after the accident, like I didn't deserve it anymore because I wasn't the man she married." What changed? I realized I'm still the man she married, just a different version, a version that's been broken and put back together. But the important parts, the love, the commitment, the partnership, those are still there. He slipped the ring back on his finger. "We're not the same people we were before the accident, but maybe that's okay. Maybe we're better in some ways." "How so?" "We don't take things for granted anymore. We don't fight about stupid stuff like trash. We say, 'I love you' every single day, multiple times. We're present with each other in a way we weren't before." He smiled. "Trauma is a terrible teacher, but if you survive it, the lessons stick." Later that evening, as I was leaving, Linda walked me to my car. "Thank you for coming," she said. "It means a lot to David, to all of us. Thank you for including me. Your family is special. We're normal people who went through something terrible, but we survived. And a lot of that is because people like you showed up for us. I was just doing my job." "No, you did more than your job. You cared. You stayed involved even when you didn't have to. You reminded us that we weren't alone." She paused. "That first night, when I couldn't find David, when I thought he might be dead and no one could tell me, that was the worst moment of my life. But then you found him. You brought us back together. I'm glad I could help. You did more than help. You gave us hope. And hope is what kept us going through all of this." She hugged me. "Don't forget us, okay? Even as you move on to other patients, other cases, we're always going to be grateful to you." "I won't forget," I promised. How could I? A year after the accident, I received a card in the mail. It was a photo card. The Chen family on a beach somewhere, all smiling, all healthy, all together. On the back, Linda had written, "Dear Noah, 1 year ago, our lives fell apart. David fell 3 stories and almost died. I spent an hour frantically searching for him, not knowing if he was alive or dead. But you found him. You identified him. You brought us back together. This year has been the hardest of our lives, but it's also taught us what matters: family, love, resilience, gratitude. David will never be the man he was before the accident. His memory isn't perfect. His career is different. His body carries scars that will never fully fade. But he's here. He's alive. He's present. And that's everything. Thank you for being part of our story. Thank you for seeing us as people, not just patients. Thank you for showing us that even in the darkest moments, there are people who care. We are forever grateful. Love, Linda, David, Amy, Jason, and Emma." I pinned that photo to the bulletin board in my locker, right next to Marcus's letter and Sarah and Ryan's letter. 3 families, 3 stories, 3 reminders of why I chose this impossible, exhausting, beautiful profession. Because medicine isn't just about treating disease. It's about bearing witness to people's worst moments and helping them find their way through. It's about a wife asking, "Where's my husband?" and being terrified of the answer. It's about an unidentified patient becoming David Chen, beloved husband and father. It's about a family broken by trauma learning to be whole again, even if whole looks different than it did before. I learned something important from Linda and David. That identity isn't fixed. We're not just one version of ourselves. We're constantly becoming, constantly adapting, constantly learning who we are in the face of changing circumstances. David Chen fell from a scaffold and almost died, but he didn't. He survived. And in surviving, he became someone new. Not less than who he was before, but different. Changed by trauma, shaped by loss, rebuilt by love. His chart once said, "Unidentified male, unstable condition." But his identity was never really lost. It was just waiting to be reclaimed. By a wife who wouldn't stop searching, by doctors who refused to give up, by a man who fought his way back from the edge. That's the power of modern medicine. Not just to heal bodies, but to restore identities. To help people remember who they are, who they love, why they're fighting. To transform unidentified into beloved, unstable into surviving, lost into found.